Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Cheltenham Borough Council Planning Committee being held on Thursday, the 21st of August, 2025. My name is Councillor Garth Barnes and I'm the chair of the committee. The meeting is being streamed live to Cheltenham Borough Council's YouTube channel and the recording of the meeting will be held for 4 years. If there is any break in transmission to the YouTube stream, the meeting will be adjourned for a short period until any issues are resolved. If you are here to make a representation to the meeting, you are consenting to the use of the sound and video recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. Please be aware that CCTV and audio recording is now in operation in the public gallery and the recordings will be held by the Council for 5 months. Please note a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, you should immediately make your way to the nearest exit. Thank you. So first item we have is apologies, and we've received apologies from Councillor Oliver, Andrews and Wheeler, and Councillor Chellan is standing in as a substitute. The other thing I want to say is that you will note that to my right-hand side, we have a new legal representative here tonight, Simon Ailes, and that's because Michael Ronan, who is our normal legal beagle, is stuck on the motorway somewhere, broken down. This was to be his last meeting, so it's a shame, really, because I wanted to place on record, and I will place on record, my sincere thanks to Michael for all the hard work he's done for the committee and all the sound advice he's given to me in particular and to the committee in general over the years. He's been a particularly good friend to the planning committee and very resourceful and very easy to talk to. So he's given us a lot of good advice, and I wish him well in his new ventures, whatever that might be. So we welcome Simon here tonight, and I will then move on. Item 2, declarations of interest. Any, Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Chair. I'm a trustee on the board of the Cheltenham Trust, therefore I will leave the room when we're discussing item A.
Thank you. Councillor Steinhardt?
Yes, this is a bit of a tenuous, distant interest, but I've been advised to declare it anyway, which is my son. For item 6E, the Scout Hut, my son is a Scout leader, but it's at the Hatherley point, which is far distant from Leckhampton. Thank you.
Thank you for that. No other declarations? Okay. So item 3 then, declarations of any independent site visits. Councillor Clark?
Yes, I apologise for missing planning view. I visited items C, D and E independently.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? No. Okay, item 4 is the minutes of the last meeting, which I hope you all have seen. Are you happy to agree them as a true record? And if so, I shall sign them as such. I see no dissension, so I shall sign them. Okay. Item 5, public questions. There are none, so we move on to item 6. The first application on our agenda is the Pitfall Pump Room e-support drive, approach drive. I'll wait Councillor Clark to leave the meeting. Right, I'll ask Ben Warren to introduce it for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the application site relates to the Pittville Pump Rooms, and the application seeks consent for a temporary change of use of the land to the west of the building for the siting of a food trailer. The application also seeks consent for the retention of the associated ancillary buildings to the rear of this and the overcladding of these structures. The application is at Planning Committee as the Cheltenham Trust are the applicant and Cheltenham Borough Council are the landowner. As most people will know, the Pittville Pump Rooms is a Grade 1 listed building located within Pittville Park, which is a registered park and garden and is a designated local green space. The site is within Cheltenham's Central Conservation Area and within the Pittville Character Area. It's got the site location plan and Google Earth image there. So on the left-hand image, the larger red box at the top is where the ancillary buildings are located. And the smaller red box is the area for the siting of the food trailer. On the right-hand side, the image there, Google is not always as up-to-date as the present day. So there you can see there the white roof of the former cafe that had a temporary consent previously on the site. But it has now been removed. The ancillary buildings are still there. Again, just zoomed in versions of what we've just discussed. Got some site photos here, again from when the cafe structure was there, but generally in the same location on this side of the existing building. In front of the trailer is to be positioned in front of the larger tree there. You can see on the left-hand photo. The red arrow there again showing where it would be positioned. Here you've got the images of the ancillary buildings that are already and remain in situ to the rear of the site, so viewed from the car park area. So we haven't got exact details as set out in the officer report of what the type of trailer would be. This is suggested in the planning statement as to an image of what could be sited on there. So yeah, just thought I'd include that. So the key planning matters for this application are the impact on the heritage assets, design, public benefits, impact on neighbouring amenity, highway considerations and impact on existing trees. It is clear that the proposal will result in harm to the designated heritage assets, in particular the setting of the Grade 1 listed pump rooms. This level of harm being considered as less than substantial. The proposal would fail to comply with the relevant heritage-related policies. However, as required by the NPPF, this level of harm should be weighed against the public benefits. The benefits have been set out in the supporting documents, but in the main, this includes financial benefits which support the ongoing operation of the Pittville Pump Rooms as a viable venue, and the social benefits of providing a facility for residents and visitors. The applicant highlighting that the former cafe was well supported and utilised when operational. Having acknowledged the temporary period of time being sought and with no direct loss of historic fabric, and taking into consideration the public benefits, on balance, officers considered the benefits do outweigh the harm. Therefore, the application is recommended for permission subject to conditions. Those conditions relating to the temporary time period for the removal of all of those structures, the time periods for the siting of the vehicle specifically, details of the vehicle trailer to be submitted prior to it being sited on the land, the implementation of the cladding works proposed in the application, restriction on operating hours in line with the previous cafe use, and restricted times for deliveries and servicing, again in line with the previous cafe use. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have no public speakers, so do we have any members' questions to the officers? No? Sorry, Councillor Steinhardt?
I know you've said something about the food trailer, but what are the what's the situation? Can you? Yep. What would put you against the sort of design that would come onto site of the food trailer?
I'm not sure we can say what would put us against it, but the conservation officer in particular is saying that, you know, we would need to see those details. I think there are some form of trailers that would just be inappropriate in this setting, in this context. We're not saying that the image that you've seen on screen is appropriate or not, but we want to be able to see what that might be before it's put on there.
Just following on from that point, it says suggested conditions include the vehicle trailer details, but also the implementation of cladding works and submission of details. Now, both of those 2 points seem to be very important. Would they be regarded as so important, as I think they are, that even if it was to be permitted today, the case would have to come back to us should the vehicle trailer details not be like this iconic Airstream, which I'm very familiar with, but something really quite different and even more inappropriate or less attractive. And similar with the cladding works, and I mean, cladding works could be more attractive, they could be less attractive, they could be quite horrible. So would it be in order for the case to come back to planning committee for consideration in the event that it was passed today or approved today?
Put simply, no, because it would be just through the process of a discharge of condition application, which would be with officers. That wouldn't typically come back to planning committee for their review. And I don't believe there's a call-in process that would allow that type of application to come to committee either. Ultimately, if members were particularly concerned, then you wouldn't want to vote in favour of the recommendation for you today, and it would be something that we'd maybe have to get the details, you know, before an application is determined. We feel that it can be dealt with as a condition and allows the applicant to have some flexibility on the type of trailer that could go on site, or even different trailers at different times.
Thank you. Councillor Challen? Oh, sorry. I saw Councillor Challen first, so.
Sorry, yes. Economics has been mentioned, and I just wondered what is the economic impact of not having the trailer there on the ability for the trust to maintain the building and retain the attraction and visitor access?
So this is one of the points that we went back to them on, because we felt that the application was lacking in detail and justification when it was originally submitted. We did, on the previous application for the other cafe that was there, we had a much more robust submission. We felt that was lacking here. So we did get some more, and we got quite a detailed supporting statement in response to our comments. So that does address it, but essentially it's put forward that the cafe use previously did provide a vital income for the trust to maintain the building for their own responsibilities, and helps as an income stream for providing the other, you know, the events and the things that they put on across the town. One of the other things put forward is that there's quite a lot of planned maintenance for the Pittville pump room itself, which might put functions out of action there. So again, it's not necessarily just in addition to, they're suggesting it might make up some short-term loss.
Councillor Foster?
When you have food trailers, there's generally somewhere to sit outside them. Maybe I've missed it, but were there any plans to provide any seating, or are we just going to have people all over the pump rooms with cardboard coffee cups?
Yep, so they've explained in the submission that they intend to put tables and chairs out on each day, so they wouldn't be permanent. The idea is that they'd put a couple of tables and chairs either on the hard standing around, or even under the portico of the main frontage. So that's their plan in terms of providing some form of seating. Ultimately, most of that wouldn't be sheltered or covered like the former cafe was, because it hasn't got any form of covering or roof on.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go into debate then. Any member for debate? Councillor Steinhardt?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm a bit concerned about this. Section 16 of the NPPF says conserving and enhancing the historic environment. We have a Grade 1 listed building, probably the most important building in Cheltenham, and there is an intention of which we don't quite know what the status of the vehicle will be, but is to put it outside there with some tables and chairs, which again we don't quite know this type of table and chair and so on, but I know that's a detail. But I feel that this is a situation whereby we should be trying to preserve the outlook, our Grade 1 listed building, to the best that we can. And I'm afraid I can't really bring myself to support this, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bamford?
Thank you, Chair. When this came before us before, a very strong economic case was made for a retaining facility as had been constructed during the pandemic. To me, it was relatively well obscured from almost every aspect that one might view the pump room. However, it didn't get through, so that's fine. I think since then, the Trust has been looking for various ways to minimise what was a substantial loss of income. I'm not sure you can go much more minimal than this. And I also think it was actually having a coffee area there was very well liked. So I should be supporting this, though I share Councillor Steinhardt's concern that this lacks the detail that the previous application actually had. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen?
To echo the speeches of both Councillor Steinhardt and Councillor Bamford, I think on the one hand there needs to be serious consideration given to the cladding and to the design of the trailer. But on the other hand, I think it's absolutely crucial that the Cheltenham Trust still receives the funds that they need. I mean, it always goes back to this question of heritage being supported versus being impacted. And I think if we don't fund things like the Cheltenham Trust, the Pittville pump room will inevitably come into more disrepair than it would if this cafe was outside of it. And on the balance of that, I'm minded to say I should support this application because it gives funds to the Trust. It's been proven to give funds to the Trust in the previous cafe. Hopefully this can continue with less impact on the heritage. And by funding the Trust, we keep the pump rooms well maintained and funded and supervised. So I think it's definitely worth supporting for the reasons that Councillor Bamford has said as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Foster?
Sorry. I've lost my thread. I think apart from the money, which is essential for the Trust to maintain the pump rooms, I actually think that some sort of cafe here has really got a good social value because people want it to be a destination and people expect from their destinations more than a postcard. You know, you need to have something to go for. And it's a long hike from the other cafe for some people up to the pump rooms. So, I mean, I would actually like to see some sort of permanent cafe in the pump rooms. I think this is a poor alternative, but I've a mind to support it.
Thank you. Any other member? No? In which case, I don't think there's anything to go back to you, Ben, on it. So happy to go to the vote. Will all those in favour of permit, please indicate. Are we missing somebody? 5, 6, 7. Eight. That's we have 6 for, 1 against and 1 abstention, and that's carried. Thank you very much. Can somebody please ask? Oh, I think she's standing outside the door. Councillor Clark, thank you. So now we move on to item 6B, which is Gravel Road. And it's Ben again to introduce it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So this application proposes external wall insulation to 3 blocks of flats being located, one on Gravel Road, one on Orchard Way and one on Arle Road. The application is at Planning Committee as Cheltenham Borough Council are the applicant and the landowner. So site location plan here. So Orchard Way is a little bit separate to the other 2, which are a bit closer together on the right-hand side there. So we've got some site photos showing the buildings as existing. So across the top is the Gravel Road building and Arle Road building on the bottom. The existing buildings are fully rendered and just painted in the 2 tones there, you can see. So this is the Orchard Way site. Still, again, fully rendered, but of a different painted design. So the proposed external finishes include brick slip detail at ground floor level and painted render on the upper floors. The Gravel Road and Orchard Way are shown to be in a similar, the same brick slip detail and painting above, with the Arle Road being slightly different. Here we have the 2 different types of brick slip design. So the key planning matters here are design, impact on amenity and sustainability. The proposed installation works are welcomed in terms of sustainability and acceptable in design terms, and there are no amenity concerns as a result of the works. The application is considered to comply with the relevant policies, and recommendation is to permit the application subject to the conditions as shown on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. We've no public speakers, so any questions from members? No? I'll open it up to members' debate then in that case. No debate. Okay. Right. We'll go straight into the vote then in that case. All those for and against, please show. Missing one? Who hasn't voted?
It's Councillor Williams.
Right. So we have everybody voted now, and that is unanimously for the application 9-0. Thank you very much indeed. So the next application is 6C, 11 Hamilton Street. And we have a new planning officer to introduce it when you're ready, Michelle.
Thank you, Chair. So this application seeks planning permission for a change of use, refurbishment and alteration of an existing Class E commercial building to create 12 apartments comprising 7 one-bed and 5 two-bed units. The application is in committee due to an objection from the parish council. The objection principally relates to the lack of any parking provision for the development. So the site is located within the principal urban area on the western side of Hamilton Street, which connects through from Cudden Street to the south to the London Road A40 to the north, close to the Sixways Junction. To the rear, the site backs onto Oakland Street, which runs parallel to Hamilton Street. So the footprint of the existing building covers the entire site at ground floor, with a more limited footprint at first floor. So here we've got some site photos. So externally, the building is faced in a mix of brick and render, with a rendered facade to the street, and has a mix of pitched and flat roofs. The building's in a relatively poor state of repair and currently detracts from the area. So this image just shows the adjacent conservation area and the location of the London Inn, which is grade 2 listed. And then there's just a photo on the left-hand side that shows that views of the rear of the building are available from Oakland Street. So here we've got the proposed site plan and roof plan, which shows solar PV on the roof. And then the coloured boxes you can see just show the proposed location of bat and bird boxes. And then we've got the existing and proposed floor plans, just for comparison. Then we've got the ground floor plan in more detail. So whilst the scheme makes no provision for car parking, the plans do provide for 17 secure cycle parking spaces and an integral refuse and recycling store, together with modest outdoor amenity spaces, which are shown at the top of the plan for 4 of the ground floor units. And then we've got the first floor. And then the comparative elevations. And then again, we've got the front and rear elevation at a slightly larger scale, which also show the neighbouring bungalow to the south and how the existing stepped form of the building would be maintained. The green dotted line you can see shows the height of the existing buildings. So the materials proposed in the external elevations will comprise white smooth render, wood effect cladding board, anthracite grey standing seam cladding, and anthracite windows and doors. So the key considerations are the principle of a change of use, its design and any impact on the historic environment, climate change, parking and highway safety, flooding and drainage, the vacant building credit in relation to affordable housing, amenity impacts, ecology and biodiversity net gain, and the Cotswold Beechwoods Special Area of Conservation. So in summary, the officer recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions and a Section 106 legal agreement. The council is currently unable to demonstrate a 5-year supply of deliverable housing sites, and the proposed redevelopment of the site for housing will result in the welcome provision of an additional 12 dwelling units and make a valuable contribution to the borough's much needed housing stock. This is a matter that should carry significant weight in the determination of the application, given the shortfall in housing land supply. The application is considered to be acceptable in terms of design and its impact on the historic environment, and will result in a significant enhancement to the street scene and wider area. Officers have not identified any harm to the setting of any designated heritage assets. From a climate change perspective, whilst there are only limited options to include sort of low carbon technologies, the application does propose a high efficiency electric heating system supplemented by the solar PV. Officers have given due consideration to all of the concerns raised by the local residents, and in particular those relating to a lack of car parking, but County Highways as a statutory consultee raised no objection. And it is important to recognise that both national and local policy highlights the need to prioritise sustainable transport modes, and that the existing established Class A use of the building, if fully operational, would undeniably contribute to traffic and parking issues in the area. The Lead Local Flood Authority raised no objection, and officers are also satisfied that no unacceptable harm to the amenity of adjacent land users or future occupiers of the development will be caused. In fact, a number of windows and openings in the rear of the building will be removed. The statutory biodiversity gain condition is not applicable in this case, but nonetheless, ecological enhancements in the form of bat and bird boxes and limited soft landscaping is proposed, and suitable mitigation towards recreational impacts on the Cotswold Beechwoods SAC has been secured. As such, taking into account all the economic, social and environmental aspects of the application and paragraph 11D of the NPPF, officers are satisfied that the proposed development is one that should be supported. And then this is just a summary of the proposed conditions, which are set out in full in the update to members with a revised schedule of conditions.
Thank you very much indeed, Michelle. We do have one speaker in objection, so I'd like to ask Julia George to address the committee. You have 5 minutes in which to make your address, and I will be very strict on that time scale. I'll give you a reminder 30 seconds before you come to your end, so please start whenever you're happy.
The residents and businesses of Hamilton Street and area are in favour of the site being redeveloped. Despite this, 29 households objected, stating their serious concerns about the impact of this proposal on our lives, given our daily experiences now. None supported this plan, and the themes of the objections are consistent: the highways issues. Hamilton Street is short and narrow within the Cudnall Street Conservation Zone and has a total of 16 homes, 7 with no off-road parking. Those that do mostly have one space with no provision for second cars or visitors. Most homes in the surrounding streets are terraced houses with no off-road spaces. There are insufficient spaces now for residents who compete for parking with staff and customers from the six-way businesses. The issues this creates are very well documented by residents who have campaigned repeatedly to make our streets accessible and safe. To date, no solutions have been implemented. The plan to add another 12 homes, nearly doubling the households in this street, with no additional parking, will exacerbate an already dire situation. This point was clearly raised in the Highways Officer's report to planning of the 16th of May, which refers to existing serious parking concerns on street and displacement issues for existing residents, suggesting that the development be reduced to 9 units at most. But the subsequent report from the same officer, dated 5th of August, states the applicant has submitted revised plans to address these issues, and the car-free element is acceptable given the location. And yet the revised plan still has 12 units and fewer on-road spaces to allow for bin servicing. And the evidence is that almost all residents in this locality do own cars. Far from the concerns being addressed as stated, they've been made worse, and yet it's now being waved through. Cars are always parked outside the site now. There are up to 8 spaces, or 7 if the neighbour adjacent to the site has any chance of getting their car off the drive safely. With protected bin store access, only 6 cars could be parked safely outside the development. This conflicts with the Gloucestershire County Council parking standards. The lack of spaces and very tight parking cause other issues, specifically a rat run, especially during rush hours, of minibuses, lorries, commuters and school traffic racing through the narrow gaps. Residents are forced to park considerable distances from their homes. Parking on double yellow lines, at corners, junctions, across H marks and dropped curbs, contrary to existing regulations, cause chaos. Dangerous reversing onto busy roads as there's no room to pass, causing frustration and road rage. cars dangerously mounting the narrow pavements and wrecking the curbstones in the conservation zone, road blockages due to deliveries and unloading, and pavement parking forcing people with walking aids, wheelchairs and pushchairs into the road. We are very clear that 12 extra households with a similar number of cars or more without any parking provision can only make this area more difficult and dangerous for everyone. Also, we regard the current plan as overdevelopment and the design and materials not in keeping with the locality, which includes listed buildings, Victorian terraces and the conservation zone. The privacy of residents, particularly in Oakland Street, would be severely impacted with the new households having the ability to see directly into windows and skylights day and night. The many comments in the residents' objections demonstrate how this proposal is contrary to the local plan, the supplementary planning document and the GCC manual for streets. It is simply not a good enough proposal. To summarise, we are not against development of the site, but we urge decision makers to look at the evidence provided, clearly showing there are already severe highways issues and as identified in the highways report. As nothing in the revised plan addresses these issues, we ask that you hold out for a suitable plan that does and mitigates against the issues, not add to them. One that sits comfortably into our locality and conservation area, and one that limits the negative impact on privacy for existing and potential residents alike. There is only one chance to get this right. We cannot conjure up more parking space once the inevitable problems come home to roost. We ask for a safe, functioning, living environment for all, and it's the very least we should be able to expect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bang on time. Okay, any questions to the officers from members? Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Chair. In the Highways Code, in the Highways objection they've submitted following a revised consultation response, they note that the drivers of vehicles parking on the highway not parking over a drop curb as laid out in the Highways Code. I'm just wondering where in the what highway are they expecting drivers to park on? From our site visit, it seemed as if there was no available parking spaces. And regardless of whether they considered not parking on the drop curb to be against what's in the Highways Code, and correct me if I've misunderstood this, there are still obviously drivers parking on the drop curb, only to be worsened by further development that doesn't account for this stress on the streets.
Yes, so the second comment from Highways doesn't raise any objection. It's a no objection. But they are just simply looking at it from the Highway Code perspective, which is there is a dropped curb there. And so people park there. It doesn't mean they should be. So you're not creating a situation that doesn't already exist.
Sorry, just to add then, does the Highways Authority give any indication about where cars should be parking instead?
No, they don't.
Councillor Derby?
Yeah, I mean, my questions relate to transport, sustainable and non-sustainable. I have to say that when we visited the site, what were described as, by some, as drop curbs just look like low curbs to me. And so my first question is, firstly, can we be assured that the on-street parking outside 11 Hamilton Street will remain unchanged? There will be no reduction in on-street parking as a result of this development. Secondly, can it be confirmed that there is a regular bus service along the London Road between the Six Ways area and the town centre? And thirdly, and finally, can it be confirmed that will in total be more bicycle parking spaces than there are proposed residences? Sorry.
Sorry, what was that last question?
Can you confirm? I know the answer.
Thank you. Yes, so the dropped curb, I mean, it's been assessed by Highways as being a dropped curb. Both the Highways officer and the Highways consultant have identified it as a dropped curb. So in theory, cars shouldn't be parking there now, but it's a realistic situation. Obviously, we saw it happening. That wouldn't be changed as a result of this development. This development wouldn't prevent parking on the highway. It's simply not proposing any additional spaces for the new residential properties. And there is a regular bus route from Six Ways into the town. I can't give you the details offhand, but there is a fairly regular route from sort of Cheltenham Kings on into the town. And then, so there's 12 apartments and 15 cycle storage spaces, which are secure and integral to the building.
Thank you. Any other member wants a question? Councillor Clark?
Yeah, I'd like to know whether Highways actually visited the site or whether they were looking on a map, because a 3/4 plunging Google map view always gives you more space than there is in reality. And I'd like to know, I think I know the answer, could we not condition that these people cannot have a parking permit?
Thank you, Chair. So I can't comment on whether Highways visited the site. I mean, I simply don't know the answer to that question, I'm afraid. You suggest that you know the answer to the second question, and you're correct, but we can't condition. I'm not sure what extent of permit parking there is around there, but we couldn't condition that they couldn't apply if that were to be the case.
Any other member? Questions? No? In that case, we'll move on then to debate. Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Chair. I think one of the things that was raised on planning view is whether we accept a redevelopment of the site, a new development of the site, or a return to employment space. And obviously, if we return it to employment space, we're going to see more cars, we're going to see more traffic. If we redevelop the site, we could come up with a proposal that's not suitable. And so the original argument that could be proposed is saying, ultimately, this is the best of all possible worlds. But to be honest, I disagree. I think there could be a much more sensitive redevelopment of the site that still keeps the building, but perhaps with less houses, perhaps with further back bin storage, other things that could be discussed. I'm of a strong mind that we recommend voting against this application and suggesting deferral. I think one of the big reasons is Highways. I don't agree with Highways' objection. Personally, I don't think it has groundings in the NPPF. I think paragraph 111 speaks against it. But I also don't think it matches the reality of the site. I think ultimately there is no space for cars to park. The traffic is going to be immense. And like the parish council suggested, the streets are going to be used as a route run. The current development will bring inevitably, if not one or two car users and several more. And there is absolutely no space on those streets for them to park. We have seen it with our own eyes in working hours. God forbid that people come after work and try and find a space to park. I mean, they'd be probably parking several streets down, maybe in another parish, in another ward, because I ultimately cannot see where they'd find the space. But also another concern that comes up, which I'm slightly disappointed isn't addressed in the report, is the impact on wheelchair users and people with disabilities. I think those streets are impassable at the moment for people with wheelchairs, and that's not going to be helped by this development. To be honest, I'm quite disappointed that that's not been considered, and that even though the public sector equality duty has had regard, that hasn't been mentioned. And again, I'm happy to stand corrected if it had been, but I couldn't see it from my reading of the report. And finally, I know there is obviously an allowance for there to be no affordable homes here, but given the area of town it is and given the people it's marketing to, I would have liked to have seen more provision of affordable homes, even if it's one or two properties. because ultimately the people who will be applying for these 1 and 2 bedroom houses will be those who are trying to work up the ladder, people probably of my generation. And for these houses to be open market price, I think is a disservice to them. So I would recommend voting against. Thank you.
Sorry, councillor, you voting against or for voting for a deferral? Which are you actually proposing?
Voting against, but would voting against allow for a deferral, or would it have to be proposed in a separate motion? Okay, so would I have to put forward a motion for deferral? Okay, then I put forward a motion for deferral.
I think, thank you, Chair. On the deferral point, I think really there needs to be, there needs to be a strong reason as to why the committee would be deferring it. Obviously, the application can't be deferred simply because the committee can't or doesn't want to make a decision today. Really, the only sort of valid reason for deferring an application is if there wasn't enough information today for the committee to be able to make a decision. But if the committee has sufficient information, which in our view the committee does, then really the committee needs to be making a decision this evening, whether that's to grant permission or refuse permission. My understanding and my reading of the debate so far is that there isn't grounds to defer the application.
So, as a proposal for deferral has been made, we will have to have a discussion on the deferral, because I have to take that vote before I take any others. So is there anybody wanting to comment on the proposal for deferral? Councillor Clark?
With no desire to annoy everybody, I actually went and looked at the previous application, which was withdrawn, to see what kind of space and provision for storage, because that's always a big issue. And I've said it before, this is overdevelopment. I know we can't ask for this to be a just cause to refuse, but I do feel I would love to see the site developed. I agree with the parish council. It's ripe for redevelopment. It will look better. People will have homes, but there are too many people squeezed onto one spot with this tumbling down of associated problems. And on the other hand, I feel deferral isn't quite where I would like to go, because I don't think it achieves anything. I think from my experience with the officers, they would have spoken already to the developer at length about possible mitigation. I'm disappointed in highways. I really am, because I agree with Councillor Allen. This is a problem. I have dear friends who live just there. It is impossible to park around there. I think you're right. I don't think there are parking restrictions that could come in, but I'm not happy. Thank you.
Thank you. We are talking about the deferral part of it. So I'm just going to ask Simon if he'll come and chat, and I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the difficulty you have with a deferral here is admirably illustrated by what Councillor Files just said. You're disappointed with highways. Unfortunately, that's not really a grounds for deferral. Would that it were. But I really don't think you're going to succeed on that. They have looked at it. You're not happy with the way they've done it. You may even be disappointed with the way in which they've done it, if indeed they did it off the plans rather than going and visiting. We don't know. But I think for that to be a deferral, I really don't think you're going to succeed on that because there's nothing to be asked to be done. I think that's what I'm saying.
Councillor Bamford.
Thank you.
This is on the deferral.
This is on the deferral. Yes, I can't support a deferral because I think the decision is clear cut. Either we're comfortable with the highways issues that we've all talked about and the impact on the local environment, or we're more mindful of the fact that we are desperate. Most planning meetings, we are talking about how desperate we are for extra accommodation in the town. So we've got those two factors to weigh up, basically. I don't think deferring is going to make any difference. I think we need to basically vote on those grounds. So I'd actually would vote against a deferral because I think we need to make our minds up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, do you want?
Yes, to make the case for my own deferral, I think what I would like to see is stronger transport assessments and stronger traffic considerations from the developer. I don't think these exist. I'm calling for the developer to produce something that could give justification to the highways response, which is that it does not reject the application on highways grounds. I don't see there being any supporting evidence for this. And I agree with Councillor Clark that there would have been substantial discussions had with the officers, with the developers, but I cannot see the fruits of that in this report or in the planning documents, I'm afraid. I mean, I don't want to vote against without having seen this. But again, if members have decided to vote against, then I understand and I would recommend voting against the application in that case.
Councillor Bamford.
By voting against the deferral and moving on to a decision on this, we're not preventing the applicant coming back with a slightly revised proposal, because if we make it clear that we are rejecting it on highway, I won't set out precisely the objections here, but we've talked extensively about those, and in fact that's I think the way I want to go, but people may differ. We're not stopping the applicant coming back in with some revised proposals, which is, so I don't think we're miles apart here, Councillor Allen, which is why I would prefer to make a decision and go for a deferral. Thanks.
Councillor Allen.
Sorry, not to labour the point, but just to say that my understanding in terms of how far we could go with revised proposals is that we can only vote on the application that we've got at hand. Revised proposals would only come with the conditions as far as I can see and what's being allowed for flexibility in the application. And as this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but as this is a full application, we should have everything at our fingertips at the moment, and we don't. So again, I would stand my ground for deferral, but again, I understand your reasons, Councillor Bamford. So, I'm happy to close my remarks here. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else on the proposal for deferral? I have to say that I don't see there are particular planning reasons for deferring. It's always a last resort at planning applications because we do have the full reports. The officers have all been discussing this for some considerable time, and we do have explanations within our report. And you've heard from the Chief Planning Officer that deferral is not appropriate. So I would guide you not to go for deferral on this case, but I will take the vote for deferral now. All those in favour, please show. For deferral 1, against deferral 8. So that's lost, I'm afraid, Councillor Allen. So we're back on the substantive motion to permit anybody who wants to talk. Councillor Davey.
Yes, I would like to say a few words. It's clear from the layout of the plan that the sort of accommodation that we're talking about would most likely be used by young people, people starting off their lives and hopefully maybe moving up later on at the property ladder. This is a group of people who are suffering greatly in Cheltenham. They don't have sufficient accommodation. This is offering them something of a lifeline. And I think it would be quite bizarre if this committee, in the context of everything that's been said by the Cabinet, that's been said by Council in terms of trying to make more accommodation available, were to reject this plan, which seems like a good plan to me. And honestly, to argue that, and I'm quoting you here, the traffic is going to be immense. Your words is just a travesty. There's no immense amount of traffic involved here. The people who are likely to be accommodated here are likely to be using buses, are likely to be walking into town. It's an easy walk into town. They are going to be cycling and so on. So I just don't believe that the scare stories that have been put out about traffic are correct. And in balancing that risk, and it is a risk, against the acute and indeed chronic need for accommodation, I think it would not look very good for our party if, having said all of these words about providing accommodation for young people, if then we were to reject this accommodation, which will primarily be used for young people. And I feel very strongly that we should not do so. So I'm going to be voting in favour of this development.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Dobie. Just one reference. We are non-party political on this committee, so guard against... yeah, I understand what you're saying. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Foster, I saw...
I'd like to say that I completely agree with what Councillor Dobie's just said. He put it so much better than I was going to put it. That was one of the points I was hoping to make. I'd also like to make the point there are excellent public transport links up there. We are living in a world in crisis. We need to move to a culture where people are prepared to use public transport. And I sympathise with the problems for car users, but we're not going to get better public transport, which we desperately need, until people are forced to use it. And why would anybody wanting a parking space consider moving to this development where it's going to be difficult? Surely that's one of the things that people consider when they move house. Can I park here? No, I can't. Well, I won't move here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Allen?
If I may respond to what Councillor Dobie and Councillor Foster have said, I've personally had experiences moving from properties that I've had to rent as a student without the actual ability to be able to park on the street and to actually move things out of someone else's car, even if it is not your own. It is nigh on impossible to actually move into those properties. I think you call my remarks on traffic a travesty. I call yours a fantasy, because ultimately there is going to be significant impact. And I agree with having more homes for people. I completely agree with having the site redeveloped. But I think we're kidding ourselves if we think this is going to be sustainable development. I ultimately think that there are better ways to go about redeveloping the site that allow for more affordable homes, that allow for places for younger people that don't end up impacting the neighbourhood in which they're going to live. If we want to actually have people flourish and prosper in this neighbourhood, they need to live in a space where they're going to be respected. And I don't think the ground is there in this development. I mean, I don't agree with the approach of having to fill up housing as if we're going to go bankrupt any second by not doing so. We are a council of balance. I respect my colleagues as members of this council who are balanced, who are reasonable, who are rational. And I think as a result, I would hope there would be a reasonable, rational, balanced approach to this application, which I don't see there is at the moment. But, you know, I take the point. If people want to say that there is affordable housing, properties for young people to be able to get on the ladder, fine, there probably are. But I just don't think we're going to see good results from this development. I'm sorry.
Thank you for your comments. Do you want to come back? I'll bring in Michelle, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so it was just in response to your comments, Councillor Allen, that the application isn't supported by any transport assessment. It is actually accompanied by a transport note, which is actually Transport Note 3 that has been developed during the pre-app that they had with the Highways Authority directly and during the previous scheme. I've got a bit of background. Unfortunately, Highways aren't here today, but I have got a bit of background as to, because obviously they had these discussions which are referred to in the report. So I just want to give you a bit more background on that, if that's okay. So the previous scheme was for 7 houses, and the Highways Authority suggested at pre-application stage that they should omit the parking, because the number of vehicles associated with the existing use, if it were operational, would be equivalent to what would have been created by the 7 dwellings. So they actually suggested that parking be removed. Obviously, the applicant has therefore moved forward on that basis with this scheme now for a conversion, and actually the accommodation that will be provided across the site will result in the same level of parking demand. So actually, existing versus proposed, the demand for parking is the same. So it would be very difficult to suggest that it would have a severe impact. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you for that explanation. That's very helpful. Councillor Clark.
I nitpick because you started speaking about the 7 houses, and you said that the cars that come with 7 houses would be the same as the units which are used now, but that's not this. So I'm sorry, I'm being nitpicking. You were talking about having looked at it at that point. Do you see what I mean? I just want to say, are they saying the same thing about 12 apartments as they said about 7 houses? Okay. I don't know who these people. I wish we could have. I would like to refer to the legal officer, some kind of request that when highways are involved in highly emotional decisions, that they guarantee they will visit the site and that they come to the planning meeting. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I did actually ask if the Highways Authority could come to this meeting, but they obviously haven't been able to. I can't answer for the Highways Authority having visited the site, but I would have thought it was probably the first thing on their agenda to see the site, but we can't rely on that. Yeah.
May I remind you, Chair, that when we had a rather long debate about the enormous development on Sherdington Road, that when the highways people, and I have nothing personal against them, but when we asked them had they been, they had looked at algorithms on a website, and that's why it sticks in the craw.
No, I fully understand, and I think I would have liked to have had their personal visit here to confirm or deny what we've been asking about. So, any other member? Councillor Allen?
Just to put on my record, my apologies. I do see the transport assessment. I've got it right up in front of me. I must have missed that when looking through the pre-app documents. So thank you. And I do withdraw my comments on that as a result.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands going up for debate. So I think if everybody's happy, we'll go to the vote on the substantive vote, which is permit. All those in favour, please show. Otherwise, against. Well, that, I think, are we? One more. Right, we do have complete votes. So it's 6 for the application, 1 against, and 2 abstentions. So that is carried and it is approved. Thank you. So we now move on to item 6D, the nurseries. And when the officer's ready, I will ask them to introduce it, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this application seeks planning permission to demolish and remove an existing stables, storage barn and hard standing access from Kidnappers Lane and to erect a new stable block with hard standing in an altered location. The application is at committee at the request of Councillor Horwood, who considers the proposed development would be in breach of multiple local and national policies relating to local green space and valued landscape, and the parish council have objected on the same grounds. So the site lies to the southwest of Kidnappers Lane within an area of local green space and forms part of a wider parcel of land in the same ownership as the nurseries to the north. So all of the land in the blue line is in the same ownership. So there are 2 public rights of way that cross the site, and these are referred to in the report. So they are shown in pink on the left-hand side, and then the extent of local green space is shown in the image on the right. The NPPF requires decisions on applications for development within local green space to be consistent with the national policy for green belts. So there's just some photos of the existing buildings, which are in a poor state of repair and currently detract from the area. Externally, they comprise timber and metal sheeting with corrugated and plastic sheeting roofs. And so the replacement building will be sited further eastwards to better align with the existing built form along this part of Kidnappers Lane, and the demolition of the existing structures and hard standing, which are shown hatched in green, could be secured by condition. The approximate route of the public right of way is shown in pink on this plan. So externally, the replacement building will be faced in horizontal timber cladding with pitched timber and felt-lined roofs, very traditional in its form, and with traditional vertical timber stable doors. The scale, massing and design of the replacement building is considered to be wholly acceptable in this context and for its intended use. The proposed building will place an existing structure already within the local green space, and therefore officers are satisfied that no harm would be caused to the openness, nor that the development would be inappropriate development in terms of greenbelt policy. In fact, the existing building is smaller in both height and footprint. Additionally, officers are satisfied that the proposals will at least conserve, even if not enhance, the landscape character. The mandatory biodiversity gain condition applies to this development, and additional on-site ecological enhancements by way of a bird box and bat boxes can also be secured by condition. The public rights of way that cross the site won't be affected by the proposals, but in any event, they are legally protected, and authority from the County Council would be required to divert or close them, even on a temporary basis. The recommendation, therefore, is to grant planning permission subject to conditions. And then, again, just got the conditions summarised here.
Thank you very much indeed. We do have one public speaker in support of the application. I have to say at this point that I'm a bit disappointed that Councillor Horwood, who has called this in, has not been able to attend the meeting to explain the reasons for his call-in. It is convention that if you call in an application to the committee, that you should be prepared to come and attest to the reasons why you do so. So maybe Councillor Horwood didn't fully understand that, but hopefully that message might get out. So I have Mr. Harris to speak to the committee. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Harris, and I will remind you 30 seconds before you come to your closure.
Thank you. I am a chartered landscape architect with over 35 years of professional practice. I am familiar with Kidnappers Lane, the local green space, and the value attributed to local green space. The local green space is recognised as being a valued landscape. This is in part for its open, rural character and its visual amenity, which are enhanced by the present equestrian land use. The replacement of an existing stable block, which is in a poor state of repair and a detractor to local visual amenity, provides an opportunity to enhance the landscape. The proposed stable block will have a smaller footprint and will better align with the existing pattern of settlement found along Kidnappers Lane. The proposed building will have a ridge height of 3.9 metres and eaves height of 2.5. This is a small structure, but with recognisable equestrian characteristics that retain an important correlation with the existing rural land use. As such, the demolition of the existing stables and the erection of the new stable block will not introduce any new features or activities that are likely to cause harm to the landscape character of the existing site or to the character of the wider local green space. Indeed, the smaller building footprint provides an uplift in biodiversity net gain. In visual terms, the proposed stable block is orientated to avoid disruption of views towards Leckhampton Hill and the escarpment, particularly when seen from Kidnappers Lane. Importantly, it is aligned with the existing backdrop of established vegetation at the boundary of the field adjacent to the adjoining residential property. This vegetation already partly screens views towards Leckhampton Hill. When seen from Kidnappers Lane, this vegetation forms the backdrop to the field, and it is against this backdrop that the narrow side profile of the stable will be seen. The location and orientation of the proposed stable block will also not interfere with general views experienced from the public right-of-way, which passes through this field. The footpath users will retain clear views along the route of the footpath, walking in either direction. As such, with the removal of the existing stable block, I do not identify any visual harm arising from the development proposals in this location. In summary, the development proposals in landscape and visual terms will conserve the rural and open character of the landscape and retain the quality and character of existing views experienced from Kidnappers Lane and the public right-of-ways. The continued equestrian land use contributes positively to both the landscape character and visual amenity of the site, which in turn conserves the character and quality of this part of the local green space. As such, I hope that you can support the consent for this well-considered application.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Well within your time. So, members' questions of the officers? Councillor Allen?
I'm very sorry already to anybody who hasn't had their dinner yet, but I have 3 questions. Would it be okay if I could ask the first 2 in turn and then save the third one separately, just because the third one is going to be slightly more complicated? The first question is, and I'm aware that this is the application on hand, so we are voting on this application, but just out of general curiosity, had there been any consideration given to redeveloping the existing stable building? And the second question is, what amendments are being made to the public rights of way / are they being consulted on as a TCPA, as is suggested in the report that you would have to do should you decide to change any public rights of way, or are they going to be left as is and then thus impacted by the access of the development?
Thank you, Chair. So, no, we haven't had any discussions with the applicant about redeveloping the existing structures. Yeah, we saw no reason to. We fully support the scheme as proposed. The public rights of way team at the county were consulted. They tend to send just sort of quite generic responses back. But they have been forwarded on to the applicant's agent in full, and the agent has advised that they wouldn't be impacted and there would be no need to divert or extinguish them. But they are aware that if they were to be impacted, even on a temporary basis, that they would need to seek the advice of the county council.
Thank you. And my third question is, in Councillor Horwood's response, he notes that the local green space should be considered in line with the Cheltenham Plan and covered by the NPPF. He says these should prevent development except in very special circumstances and without the caveats that now apply to Greenbelt, according to footnote 45 of the current NPPF. In the report, the local green space is treated exactly like it would be for the Greenbelt, as I understood it, in terms of all the caveats and so on. Looking at footnote 45 of the NPPF, it seems to refer to grey belt and any sort of previously developed land set out in Chapter 13. I'm just wondering what consideration has been given to this comment, whether is it correct or does it need reference? Yeah, again, because I didn't quite understand the point that was being made in the representation / what the officer's comment on the representation would be.
Yes, so the NPPF clearly sets out that any development in local green space needs to be considered in relation to greenbelt policy, but excludes grey-belt land. We haven't considered this to be grey-belt land. We are happy that it is an appropriate development in the greenbelt.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Chan?
May I ask 2 questions as well? The first one is a straightforward one, really. The hard standing, is that permeable? Or would that be permeable, the new hard standing? And the second one, again, relates to something Councillor Horwood has put in his document, and that is the development would serve a transparent objective of blocking the viewpoint so that further development can be inserted behind the new stables. And I just wondered to what extent we ought to be able to take that into consideration if it's a supposition.
Yes, so on that second point, it's speculation, so it can't be taken into account in the consideration of the application. I believe the hard standing is permeable. I mean, if members felt it necessary, it could be a condition, but yeah, I haven't got the plans in front of me, no, but I'm almost certain it is. I just don't want to confirm what the material is. It's to zoom in, it's really small. Yeah, so yeah, so they are proposing a permeable surface, yeah.
Councillor Sarhart?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, on our site visit, I got a feeling that somebody said that the demolition of the old stable block would be returned to green land. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, and there is a condition that requires that to be carried out once the replacement building is built. Yeah, there is a condition that requires the existing stables and everything, the hard standing, to be removed and yeah, returned just to the green fields that we saw.
Councillor Clark?
Sorry to be pedantic. When? I mean, what's the limit on that?
Within... Sorry, Chair. Yeah, within 1 calendar month.
No other questions? We'll go to debate. Any member? No. In which case, I assume we're ready to vote. The recommendation is for permit. All those please show that way or otherwise. So that is, everybody voted, and it is unanimously for the permit, the application. So thank you very much indeed. That's 9 votes to 0. So now we to 6E, which is the Scout headquarters in Leckhampton Road. I'll ask Michelle if she will introduce it for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. Right, so this application seeks planning permission to erect a replacement scout hut on Leckhampton Road following demolition of the existing building. The application is at committee at the request of Councillor Hallwood on behalf of the objectors for reasons relating to the proximity to neighbouring properties, the scale of the new building and the risk of overlooking and loss of privacy from the skylights. So the site is located on the western side of Leckhampton Road at the foot of Leckhampton Hill and the former reservoir and Cotswold National Landscape lie to the south. To the north and west, the site is bound by residential properties in Leckhampton Views and Leckhampton Rise, with the properties in Leckhampton Views sitting at a lower level. These neighbouring residential developments were granted planning permission in 2014 and 2016. So the existing Scout Hut is single storey and faced in brick with a pitched corrugated sheet roof and metal frame windows. The building is located in proximity to the northern site boundary with associated hard standing to the south, and access to the site is via a single track lane. And then those photos just seek to show the difference in heights between the properties in Leckhampton Views and the Scout Hut on the left, and then the properties in Leckhampton Rise, which sit at a slightly higher level on the right. So the existing building is beyond its serviceable life, and in fact the need to replace the building was previously recognised back in 2014 when an alternative scheme was approved, which actually included additional accommodation at first floor. However, this permission expired quite some time ago in 2019. So this plan shows the footprint of the building in grey, or the existing building in grey, with the proposed footprint outlined in blue, and then the extent of the AONB to the south. So the replacement building would be similarly located, but adopt a larger L-shaped footprint. The long axis sitting adjacent to the northern boundary on a similar footprint to the existing building, with its shorter access sitting adjacent to the western boundary. And then we've just got the existing and proposed floor plans. So the additional footprint is proposed in order to provide much improved and more modern facilities and has been designed to meet the needs of the Scouts. And then we've got the existing and proposed roof plans. So you can see there's a solar PV array on the proposed roof. And then we've got the elevations. So the replacement building is single storey, and it will be faced in vertical timber effect cladding with a standing seam zinc roof and dark grey powder coated aluminium windows and doors. And so these section drawings are helpful in understanding the relative heights of the buildings, with the dotted red line showing the outline of the existing building. So the key considerations are the principle of developing, redeveloping the existing facility, its design, sustainability and climate change, any landscape impact, drainage, highway safety, neighbouring amenity, and biodiversity net gain. So overall, officers are satisfied that the scale, massing and design of the replacement building is wholly acceptable in this context, and officers are satisfied that no significant harm will be caused in terms of landscape impact, drainage, neighbouring amenity or highway safety, and no highway safety objection has been raised by the county. All concerns raised by local residents have been duly considered in the determination, and the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions. And then again, just got the suggested conditions summarised here. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, for that. This has been called forward again by Councillor Hallwood, and my previous comments on the other application apply on this instance as well, so I won't repeat them. We have two speakers on this. The first speaker has asked not to be identified on film and also by name, but I have taken legal advice and I am going to ask to name you as the objector. So, Mr. Garside, you have 5 minutes to come and represent your case, and I will give you the cue 30 seconds before you come to the end of your address.
Yeah, my name's Martin Garside, and I live in one of the 5 houses in Leckhampton Views that back directly onto the Scout Hut site. Since I submitted a transcript of my intended talk, I've read an update of the Planning Officer's report, and as a result, I will cut short what I say. Foremost, there's no objection to a new Scout Hut per se. The present building is dilapidated and needs replacing. However, residents have raised concerns relating to the potential for increased noise and disruption and the siting of the proposed new structure. As we've seen from the plans put on screen, this building is very substantially larger than what it replaces. It's in fact well over 50% larger. Initially, the planning consultant stated that the intensity of its use will not increase. However, the Scout Hut trustees, in their comment to planning, subsequently said that while the hut will remain first and foremost a scouting centre, we do anticipate that the new hut will see higher levels of usage. The enhanced facility will enable us to support more inclusive youth programmes and offer space to local organisations who lack suitable venues. I hope that doesn't mean party venues. So we are now not just getting a replacement Scout Hut, and this raises serious concerns for residents regarding the potential for increased noise and possible late night activities. The planning officer has said that permission is recommended subject to condition, but no mention of this appears to be made in the planning officer's report, and it is requested that consideration is given to making conditions regulating the use of the premises. Another major concern is that the proposed new building is only 5 feet from the rear fences of adjoining residences, with, as you've seen, the drop down to Leckhampton Views is held in place effectively by a substantial retaining wall, and it's been requested that the new building is stepped back to avoid this. Just a couple of feet further back would help in this respect. Presumably in response to this concern made in comments to planning, the Scout Hut trustees have stated in their comment, and I quote, "There will be a significant gap between the new hut and the fence retaining wall, which we expect will be a larger gap than the one between the fence and the existing building." I can't find any mention of this in the planning officer's report or in the conditions that she has made, and unless existing plans are altered now, how will this actually happen? Can steps be taken to ensure that it does? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garside. That's all right, Ian. I now have Mr. Conway, who is a supporter of the application, and you have 5 minutes also.
Good evening, my name is Kerry Conway. I am a trustee from the Leckhampton Scout Group and the parent of 2 children who are participants in Scouting. We support the planning officer's conclusion, and we have broadly 3 points that we wish to make. The first is that this development is necessary to ensure the continued provision of an important service. The second is that we've always sought to be a responsible neighbour. And the third is that we've got broad community support for this development. So firstly, this development is necessary to continue a valuable service. So the Scout Hut has served the community now for more than 50 years. And in that time, thousands of boys and girls have passed through. And in addition to supporting Scouting itself, we've been there as a resource for other community activities. For example, we've facilitated a toddler group. We've recently hosted a VE Day celebration coffee morning for the community. The hut is now very dilapidated and it is approaching the end of its usable life. Parts are falling into disrepair, it's poorly insulated and not energy efficient, and it lacks modern facilities that would enable us to make provision for people with disabilities. So the redevelopment is designed to redress these issues and ensure that the valuable services the hut provides continue for generations to come. So we like to think that we have been a responsible neighbour. So the hut has been there for many years before Leckhampton Rise and Leckhampton Views were ever developed as a residential property. But nonetheless, we've always made every effort to respect our neighbours' interests. We've avoided hosting activities which might create excessive noise or disturbance. We've ensured activities end at a reasonable hour. And we've actively reached out to our neighbours to encourage their participation in the events that we hold. And we've also showed our responsibility through the redevelopment proposal that we've come up with. The original previously approved development was a 2-storey building. We've held extensive open consultation to inform the design, and we've actually come up with a design which keeps the height to a minimum increase, less than 20 centimetres. And that's needed to enable modernisation to bring us up to modern construction standards. We have fewer windows facing onto the neighbours, not more. The skylights don't afford views of the neighbouring buildings. There's more sound insulation, and the sighting is no closer to the existing neighbours than the current hut. Thirdly, the proposed development commands broad community support. There are currently more than 100 children who are enrolled in one or other of the groups at the site, and they and their families are strongly supportive of this. The planning process has seen a significantly greater number of positive responses for this proposal than in opposition, and indeed many of the neighbours themselves are supportive of this. The planning consultant who has supported on a pro bono basis our preparation of this application indeed lives on Leckhampton Views. So to summarise, we see this as a necessary development to continue a valuable service. We like to believe we've been a responsible neighbour and we will continue to be one, and we see this as a proposal commanding broad support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Open to members' questions. No? Open to debate then. Frank, can.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I won't be personally reiterating points for support. I think they're very well laid out in the report. I think the planning application is balanced, it's reasonable and it's rational, and it has my full support. I want to speak more about the absolute necessity of having Scouts and doing everything we can to support them, because ultimately we are in a situation where lots of... I mean, it's your own debate. It's part of the application. Thank you. Because we shouldn't be. I don't think there is reasonable grounds in planning terms to vote against this, especially when the Scouts provide such a good service to the community. I mean, there are kids on the street at the moment who are susceptible to crime. There are people who are, lacking these third-party community spaces, especially on the outer suburbs of town. And when a group like the Scouts comes forward and puts through a reasonable application with pro bono support as well, I mean, I think it's immense. And I think the scheme for a larger hall is absolutely necessary to continue their work. And I think it's been put forward in a very moderate way. I mean, granted, there is maybe 500 millimetres of extended height, if I'm not incorrect in saying from what I can see from the report, but is it less?
I think it said 20.
20? Oh, well, even less then. Great. Because I cannot see how that would impact the views compared to the current site. But even then, views from a building are not a planning consideration, and there are really no grounds to oppose this application on.
Thank you for that. Yes, I think we all endorse the Scouting movement, but we're looking at planning issues per se for this. So any other member? No? In that case, I don't think there's anything for you to come back on, so I will go straight to the vote. All those, it is for permit. All those in favour, please show. All those against, please show. That has come back unanimously in favour of permit, 9-0. Thank you very much indeed. Sorry, I ask you to look at the appeal updates. I hope you've had a chance to read those. There are no other items at item 8 that I consider need to be responded to. So I'm closing the meeting, and the next meeting is scheduled on the 18th of September. So I look forward to seeing you all then.